I was sitting in my sunlit kitchen, the kind of place I used to dream about when I was a lonely teenager, when my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart stop. It was from Emily. Yes, that Emily. The same girl who, along with her little clique, had made my 13th year a living nightmare. I stared at the screen, her words sugary sweet, pretending as if nothing had ever happened between us. Hey, long time no talk. I saw your name in the news and thought of you. We should catch up. I almost laughed. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Years ago, I would have given anything for a message like this. Back then, I was desperate for their approval, for a place at their table. But now, things were different. Now, I was the one with the power. But they had no idea who I'd become, or what I remembered. When I was 13, my world was small but safe. My friends, Emily, Jess, and Lauren, were the center of it. We spent every lunch break huddled together, whispering secrets and making plans for the future. We had matching bracelets, inside jokes, and a promise that we'd always have each other's backs. I trusted them with everything. My fears, my dreams, even the silly poems I wrote in my diary. I thought we were inseparable. The kind of friends who would grow old together, laughing about our awkward teenage years. Looking back, I can see the cracks that were already forming. There were moments when Emily's compliments felt more like backhanded jabs, when Jess would roll her eyes if I answered a question too quickly in class, or when Lauren would forget to invite me to a sleepover. But I brushed it off, desperate to believe that I belonged. I told myself that every group had its ups and downs, that I just needed to try harder, be funnier, smarter, more agreeable. I was so eager to please, so afraid of being left out, that I ignored the warning signs. The day everything changed started out like any other. We were planning Emily's birthday party, and I was excited to help. I spent hours making her a handmade card, pouring my heart into every word. But when I showed up at school, the three of them were huddled together, whispering. As I approached, they fell silent. Emily looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, we need to talk," she said, her voice oddly formal. My stomach twisted. They told me, in the most casual way, that they didn't want to hang out with me anymore. No explanation, no chance to defend myself. Just a cold, rehearsed speech about growing apart and needing space. I remember standing there, my face burning, clutching the card I'd made, while they walked away without a backward glance. The hallway felt impossibly long and empty. I could hear other kids whispering, some even laughing. I wanted to disappear. For weeks after, I replayed that moment in my mind, searching for what I'd done wrong. I tried to talk to them, to fix things, but they ignored me or, worse, mocked me behind my back. Suddenly, I was invisible. The lunch table where I once belonged was off limits. My phone, once buzzing with group chats and inside jokes, was silent. I ate alone, walked the halls alone, and cried myself to sleep more nights than I cared to admit. The pain was sharp and raw, a constant ache in my chest. I missed them so much it hurt, but I missed the person I was with them even more. I started to doubt everything about myself, my worth, my likability, even my dreams. I became quieter, shrinking into myself, afraid to trust anyone. The world felt colder, harsher, and I wondered if I'd ever feel safe again. I thought they were my forever friends. I was wrong. The days after they left me were a blur of humiliation and confusion. Word spread quickly, as it always does in middle school. Suddenly, I was the girl who'd been dumped by her own friends. Some kids snickered when I walked by. Others whispered just loud enough for me to hear. I tried to keep my head down, but it felt like everyone was watching, waiting for me to break. The cafeteria became a minefield. I'd scan the room for a friendly face, but there was never one. I started eating lunch in the library, hiding behind stacks of books, pretending I was too busy to care. The loneliness was suffocating. I missed the easy laughter, the shared secrets, the feeling of belonging. I missed having someone to text after a bad day, someone to sit with on the bus. My grade slipped. I stopped raising my hand in class, afraid of drawing attention. Even at home, I withdrew, not wanting my parents to see how much I was hurting. I felt invisible, like I could disappear and no one would notice. But in that silence, something unexpected happened. I found comfort in books, losing myself in stories where the lonely girl always found her place. I started drawing again, filling sketchbooks with images that captured how I felt, sometimes dark and stormy, sometimes hopeful. I poured my pain into every page, and slowly it became something I could hold, something I could control. One afternoon, the school librarian noticed my drawings and invited me to join the art club. It was the first time in months that someone saw me for more than my pain. Art club became my refuge. The other kids were quiet, a little odd, but kind. We didn't talk much, but we didn't have to. There was a comfort in the shared silence, in the gentle encouragement of a teacher who believed in me. I started to feel a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe I could build something new for myself. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was a start. Still, the scars from that year never fully faded. I learned to keep people at arm's length, to guard my heart. But I never forgot how they made me feel, or the promise I made to myself that day. High school was a chance to start over, and I grabbed it with both hands. I kept my circle small, but I poured myself into the things that made me feel alive. Art became more than a hobby. It was my voice, my armor, and my escape. I joined every club that would have me, from the yearbook committee to the debate team, determined to prove to myself that I was more than the girl they left behind. Each small victory, a ribbon at the art fair, a compliment from a teacher, a new friend who liked me for me, helped stitch my confidence back together, thread by thread. I still had bad days, moments when the old pain would sneak up on me, but I learned to let it fuel me instead of break me. I worked hard, not just to be noticed, but to be proud of who I was becoming. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, where the animals didn't care about popularity or rumors. Their unconditional affection was a balm I didn't know I needed. Slowly, I began to trust again, to believe that I could build a life that was mine alone. The person who made the biggest difference, though, was my grandmother. She was a force of nature, sharp-witted, fiercely independent, and endlessly supportive. She saw through my defenses from the start, never pushing but always encouraging. She'd invite me over for tea and stories, sharing tales of her own struggles and triumphs. She taught me that pain could be a teacher, that resilience was a choice, and that forgiveness, especially of myself, was the greatest gift I could give. She celebrated every milestone, no matter how small, and reminded me that I was worthy of love and happiness. As I grew older, our bond only deepened. She became my mentor, my confidant, and my biggest cheerleader. When I got accepted into my dream college, she was the first person I called. She cried happy tears and told me she'd always known I was destined for great things. Even as her health began to fail, she never lost her spark. She'd sit in her favorite chair, wrapped in a knitted shawl, and tell me, "You're stronger than you think, darling. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." Her passing was a blow I wasn't prepared for. The world felt emptier without her laughter, her wisdom, her unwavering belief in me. But even in her absence, I felt her presence guiding me, urging me to keep moving forward. I threw myself into my studies, determined to honor her memory by living the life she'd always wanted for me. Then, just as I was settling into a new rhythm, I received a call from her lawyer. My grandmother had left everything to me, her house, her savings, her art collection, and a trust fund that would change my life forever. I was stunned, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her gift and the responsibility it carried. For the first time, I felt the weight of real possibility, the sense that my future was wide open. Just when I thought I'd finally found peace, everything changed with one phone call. When the lawyer told me I was the sole heiress, I thought I'd misheard him. I sat there, clutching the phone, my mind racing to catch up. My grandmother had always been generous, but I never imagined she'd leave me everything. The house, the art, the investments, it was more than I could comprehend. For a moment, I just sat in stunned silence, the reality of it washing over me in waves. Then came the excitement, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. I could finally pay off my student loans, travel, maybe even start my own art studio. The possibilities felt endless, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to dream without limits. But as the days passed, excitement gave way to anxiety. I worried about making the right choices, about living up to my grandmother's faith in me. I kept the news quiet at first, telling only a few close friends. But secrets like that don't stay hidden for long. The local paper ran a story about my grandmother's legacy, complete with a photo of me at the art fair. Suddenly, people I barely knew were congratulating me, asking questions, hinting at favors. It was overwhelming and a little unsettling. Then, out of nowhere, I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old classmates, distant relatives, even teachers who'd barely noticed me before. But the ones that stopped me cold were from Emily, Jess, and Lauren. Their names popped up on my phone like ghosts from another life, each message dripping with nostalgia and false warmth. "Hey, I saw the news, so happy for you. We should totally catch up, it's been too long." I stared at their words, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and disbelief. That's when the messages started pouring in, from people I never thought I'd hear from again. At first, I ignored their messages, thinking they'd give up if I didn't respond. But they were persistent, each new text more effusive than the last. Emily sent a string of heart emojis and a selfie of us from 7th grade, as if a filtered memory could erase years of silence. Jess wrote long paragraphs about how much she missed our old times, conveniently skipping over the part where she laughed as I ate lunch alone. Lauren, always the peacemaker, apologized for drifting apart, blaming the chaos of growing up. Their words were sugary sweet, but I could taste the bitterness underneath. I read their messages over and over, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to scream, to call them out for the pain they'd caused. Another part wanted to delete everything and move on, to prove I was above their games. But a darker, sharper part of me, the part that remembered every whispered insult, every cold shoulder, wanted something else. I wanted them to feel what I had felt, the sting of being used, the ache of being forgotten. I wanted them to see that I was no longer the girl they could toss aside. So I replied. I kept my tone light, even friendly, matching their energy with practiced ease. "Wow, it's been forever. I'd love to catch up." The invitations came quickly, coffee dates, brunches, even a girls' night out. They acted as if nothing had happened, as if we'd simply lost touch and were now picking up where we left off. I played along, curious to see how far they'd go. Each meeting was a performance, a dance of fake laughter and forced nostalgia. They complimented my clothes, my hair, my glow up, never missing a chance to mention my inheritance in roundabout ways. It was almost funny, watching them try to worm their way back into my life. Emily bragged about her new job, but her eyes kept darting to my designer bag. Jess gushed about her upcoming wedding, hinting at how expensive everything was. Lauren asked about my travel plans, suggesting we plan a girls' trip like old times. I smiled, nodded, and let them talk, all the while cataloging every insincere word. The more they tried to impress me, the more obvious their motives became. But beneath the surface, old wounds throbbed. Their presence stirred up memories I'd tried to bury, the loneliness, the humiliation, the desperate longing to belong. I caught myself wondering if they'd changed, if maybe they regretted what they'd done. But every time I let my guard down, they'd say something that reminded me exactly who they were. A careless joke at my expense, a dismissive glance when I mentioned my art, a subtle dig about how lucky I was. It was clear they hadn't come back for me. They'd come back for what I could give them. Still, I kept the act going, letting them believe they were winning me over. I accepted their invitations, listened to their stories, and even let them post photos of us together. I could see the comments rolling in, old classmates, mutual friends, all marveling at our reunion. It was a spectacle, and I was the star. But behind my smile, I was planning. I wanted them to see the life I'd built, the strength I'd found, and the power I now held. I wanted them to realize, too late, what they'd lost. They thought I was still the same desperate girl they left behind. They were in for a surprise. I decided to host a small get-together at my new place, a cozy, sunlit apartment filled with my art and my grandmother's antiques. I invited Emily, Jess, and Lauren, along with a few genuine friends I'd made over the years. The air buzzed with nervous excitement as everyone arrived, the old trio arriving together. All smiles and compliments. They gushed over the view, the decor, the wine, but I could see the calculation in their eyes, the way they measured every detail. As the evening wore on, I steered the conversation toward our shared past. I asked about middle school, about the memories we'd made, and watched as they grew uneasy. I brought up the day they'd left me, my voice light, but my words sharp. Remember that time you all decided to stop talking to me? I always wondered what changed. The room grew quiet. Emily laughed nervously, just looked away, and Lauren mumbled something about kids being kids. They tried to brush it off, to rewrite history, but I didn't let them. I recounted the little betrayals, the sleepovers I wasn't invited to, the rumors they'd spread, the way they'd turned the whole school against me. I watched their faces shift from smug to uncomfortable, their smiles faltering. They offered half-hearted apologies, blaming immaturity, stress, anything but themselves. Emily reached for my hand, her voice syrupy sweet, insisting she'd always cared. Jess tried to change the subject, and Lauren asked if we could just move on. But I held my ground. I told them how their actions had shaped me, how the pain they caused had forced me to find strength I never knew I had. I let them see the scars not out of spite, but because I needed them to understand. For the first time, I saw real fear in their eyes, not of me, but of what they'd done and what it meant for them now. But I wasn't done yet. They needed to understand what they'd lost. The room was thick with tension, the kind that makes every word feel heavier than it should. I let the silence linger, watching as Emily, Jess, and Lauren shifted uncomfortably on my couch. Their eyes darted between each other, searching for a way out, a way to smooth things over and slip back into the roles they'd always played. But I wasn't going to let them. Not this time. I stood up, drawing everyone's attention, and raised my glass. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I began, my voice steady and clear. It means a lot to be surrounded by people who have supported me, believed in me, and stood by me, even when it wasn't easy. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of my real friends, the ones who had seen me at my lowest and never turned away. Then I turned to the trio, my gaze unwavering. There's something I've been wanting to say for a long time. I continued, my words deliberate. When I was 13, I lost more than just friends. I lost my sense of belonging, my confidence, and for a while, my hope. But I also learned what real friendship looks like. I learned that people who truly care about you don't disappear when things get hard. They don't use you or abandon you, or come back only when it's convenient. Emily tried to interrupt, her voice trembling. We were just kids, we didn't know. I held up a hand, stopping her. You knew enough to hurt me, and you know enough now to realize why you're here tonight. I reached for a small stack of envelopes on the table, each one addressed in careful handwriting. I wanted to do something special, something that would honor the lessons I've learned and the people who helped me become who I am. I handed the first envelope to my closest friend, someone who had stood by me through thick and thin. Inside was a letter and a donation receipt to a charity she cared about, made in her name. I did the same for 2 others, each gift personal and meaningful. The room filled with warmth and gratitude, my real friends beaming with surprise and pride. Then I turned to Emily, Jess, and Lauren, handing them each an envelope. Their faces lit up with anticipation, but as they opened them, confusion flickered across their features. Inside was a simple note. In honor of the lessons you taught me, I've made a donation to the Anti-Bullying Alliance in your names. Thank you for showing me what I never want to become. The silence was deafening. Emily's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. Jess flushed deep red, her hand shaking. Lauren stared at the note, her eyes filling with tears, not the kind that ask for sympathy, but the kind that come when you realize you've been truly seen, and not in the way you hoped. I let the moment hang, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking their approval or their friendship. I was simply done. I turned back to my real friends, raising my glass once more. To the people who matter, and to the future we build for ourselves. The rest of the room erupted in laughter and cheers, the energy shifting from tense to joyful in an instant. Emily, Jess, and Lauren sat frozen, exposed for what they were. They tried to recover, making awkward excuses about early mornings and busy schedules, but no one was listening. They slipped out quietly, their departure barely noticed. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. My friends hugged me, told me how proud they were, and we celebrated late into the evening. I realized that revenge didn't have to be cruel or dramatic. Sometimes, the best revenge is living well, surrounding yourself with people who truly care, and letting go of the ones who don't. For the first time, I felt truly free from my past. In the days that followed, word of what happened at my gathering spread quickly. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emily, Jess, and Lauren were furious, embarrassed, and scrambling to control the narrative. They tried to paint me as vindictive, but most people saw through it. Some even reached out to say how much they admired my strength. For the first time, I didn't care what the gossip was. Their opinions no longer held any power over me. I found myself walking lighter, breathing easier. The anxiety that used to gnaw at me whenever I thought about the past was gone. I spent more time with the friends who had proven themselves, deepening those bonds and making new memories. My art flourished, fueled by a sense of freedom and self-acceptance I'd never known before. I realized I didn't need validation from people who couldn't see my worth. I had learned to see it for myself. Looking back, I understood that the pain I'd endured had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was grateful for the lessons, even the hard ones. I learned that real friends show up when it matters, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and that self-worth isn't something anyone else can give or take away. I stopped measuring my value by who wanted to sit with me at lunch or who sent me a text. I started measuring it by how I treated others, how I honored my own dreams, and how I showed up for myself. There was a time when I thought being chosen by them would make me whole. Now I knew better. I was already whole. The inheritance changed my circumstances, but it was the journey that changed me. I was finally at peace with my story, proud of the woman I'd become. But the real gift wasn't the money, it was finally loving myself. Years have passed, and my life looks nothing like it did back then. I'm surrounded by people who truly care, friends who celebrate my wins and hold me up during losses. My art has become my career, and I wake up every day grateful for the chance to create and connect. The scars from my past are still there, but they're just a part of my story, not the whole of it. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt abandoned or betrayed, I want you to know you're not alone. The pain is real, but it doesn't have to last forever. You are worthy of love, respect, and happiness, no matter what anyone else says or does. Trust yourself, even when it's hard. Keep moving forward, even when it hurts. The right people will find you, and you'll find yourself along the way. If you've ever been left behind, remember, your story isn't over yet.